it should be there. It should be accessible when people need to know. But I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do. That we want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, these people really play us as suckers, and they know how fragile the banking system is. They know how vulnerable it is to a bank run, and they're just hoping that we don't catch on. But we better catch on. And that video, people should probably rewind it and play it a couple times to really get it in their minds. What these people know and what they're basically hiding from the rest of us.
Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks for being here. Well, those are the trolls at the FDIC who think you're nothing but a schmuck. And that was Allan Paul Roberts. The book is in my hands, The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything to Usher in a New World Order. Friends, the sheeple people don't know anything about this. This is the language they do not speak. And let me tell you something. It is a must-buy, must-share book. We talk about it in great detail in this one. Thanks for being here. Before we start, just a quick word about something I believe in very strongly, and I hope you'll take a second to listen. You know the old saying, there's only two things that are certain in life, taxes and death? Well, there's actually a third thing that's 100% guaranteed, money printing. The government will never stop printing money. According to experts, achieving a comfortable retirement will require $4 million, and with inflation picking up, that number will probably grow higher. But fear not, there is a solution. Bitcoin has recently surged to a record high of 111,000. It's the ideal asset to potentially transform $100,000 into $1 million within just 5 years. And President Trump is now supporting Cynthia Lummis's bill to buy 1 million Bitcoin for the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. If this happens, do you know what's going to happen to the price of Bitcoin? With My Digital Money's crypto IRA, you don't just grow your wealth, you keep it with the most robust cold storage security in the industry. Your Bitcoin or crypto is locked down and tax-free. Don't wait any longer. Take control of your future by visiting mydigitalmoney.com today or call now to speak with a U.S.-based representative. Your retirement dreams can become a reality. Consider holding Bitcoin in your portfolio. I do. The link to My Digital Money is below. Friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you very much. Sean from SGT Report with a very important interview about the globalists' plan to collapse everything to usher in the New World Order. That's the new book by Allan Paul Roberts. It was published in October 2024, and it could not be more timely since we are now all experiencing a great awakening. Guys, let me just say before I introduce the guest and bring him on specifically, I just want to let you all know that just 10 short years ago, the things covered in this book were completely foreign to the normies. I mean, it was like speaking a different language. And I've always said, you can't wake up your friends, neighbors, and colleagues. They have to want to wake up and then begin to go down the rabbit hole themselves on their own and do some damn research, folks. Stop listening to the CIA mainstream mockingbird media. And that's exactly what this book will do. And I got to say one thing before we introduce Allan Paul Roberts. This book is really a multimedia experience equipped with QR codes. Instead of footnotes in the back of the book, you get the QR codes that will take you directly to sound clips and articles from the likes of the mainstream horror media, the Mockingbirds, and the Truth Tellers. We'll get to that in this interview with Allan Paul Roberts. Allan, how are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great, Sean. Been really looking forward to this, so thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on. You know, I've taken some notes here about your book, and it is a very good read. I would highly recommend this book to my audience, and of course, I'll leave a link below. Support the author, support the truth tellers, guys. We know what a great audience I have, and they're happy to do that. But in this case, this is a book you can pass on to the sheeple people, to the people in your life that cannot wake up and seem hell-bent on never waking up. Those are the people we really, really need to reach. Because yes, there is a great awakening happening in the world, but boy, the powers that ought not be, they are trying to suppress it and extinguish it. Do you think I have that about right, Alan?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree 100%. It's just the way it is. It's the world we're living in.
Yeah. And you note early in the book a little thing that I've talked a lot about in the past, and that is normalcy bias. See, our friends, neighbors, and colleagues, especially, even people to whom I'm really close in my little neighborhood, so many of them suffer from normalcy bias because they don't speak the language that you and I and my audience speak. They don't know what the New World Order is. They don't know that Bush Sr. talked glowingly of a New World Order coming into fruition more than 220 times while he was president. They don't even know that he was the director of the CIA before becoming president. And you know what they certainly don't know, Alan? They don't know that Bush Sr.'s dad, Prescott Bush, once tried to topple the U.S. government with his bankster buddies. So how could they not have normalcy bias when they don't even speak the language, Alan?
Yeah, I think it probably helps to remember that there was a time when each one of us had some level of normalcy bias as well. And we got here through a journey. And I'm sure, like me, you're probably really grateful that something happened that woke you up. And that's what happened with me and so many other people. And in the book, I try to keep that in mind, that I may have a reader who is suffering from that. And so the book takes a very kind of general approach into just talking about, how things used to be and how did we get here. And it gradually talks about, well, what is globalism? Who are the globalists and what are their goals? And it's only after that that we start talking about, what the book's really all about, these 11 collapse points that are under attack and in danger of falling. But it seems that approach really is working. I've had so many people tell me this is the easiest book to read that I've ever read. I had one friend of mine said, I hate to read and I'm blowing through this. It was like I gave it to him one evening and the next day he said, I'm already on page 75. I can't put it down. But it comes from that understanding place where, we've all been here. And so how do you kind of peel back the veneers so people can start to see, and it takes you through it gradually. And it intentionally starts with the collapse points that are the easiest to be convinced of before it moves on to the harder ones. And so by taking that approach, it kind of builds trust and gets people kind of willing. So to kind of hear the truth. So like you said, for the normies in your life, this would be something to consider reading yourself, but then passing on, because if they can get past the title, if they can just get past that cover and actually open it up, I think many of them will be surprised.
Well, I think it's a great title. I mean, it's spot on. And I want to ask you what woke you up. And first, I'll just share what woke me up. And it was 9/11 and the collapse of Building 7. That whole thing sent me down the rabbit hole for days and weeks and months, and frankly, years, trying to suss it out, reading the books by the whistleblowers, reading the books by the people, Dr. Stephen Jones, who found thermite and nanothermite in the dust at 9/11, etc. But I think the powers that ought not be, the globalists, the evil ones, they did us a big favor with the lockdowns in 2020. They really, truly did. As painful as that was, and the rollout of the bioweapon masquerading as a vaccine, they actually did us a huge favor because that, unlike 9/11, which could not wake up my friends in the workplace at Target when I told them about it, and I said, guys, there's something wrong here. They ignored me. They thought I was crazy, just like the graphic artist who introduced me to Alex Jones and the collapse of Building 7 really early on in my lifetime. And that didn't wake them up. But I think a lot of normies were woken up by the COVID lockdowns and the rollout of the bioweapon. People are starting to wake up, I think, in large part because of that, trusting the science. What say you? What woke you up?
Well, it's interesting that you said 9/11 because that was probably the most foundational thing for me as well. And I had this odd experience. You ever have something happen to you and you can't quite things don't line up and you say like, why did they do that? Well, shortly after 9/11, I went into a phone store to buy a new phone. And I wanted to buy a phone where I could buy extra batteries to have just, to be able to power the phone in case it went dead. And the guy behind the counter said, we don't have those anymore. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, every phone we have has non-removable batteries. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you want to be able to replace your battery? And I started thinking about that. And then, as time went on and, we learned about how our phones are tracking us even when they're turned off. Well, it makes total sense then that you wouldn't be able to remove the battery, because if you did, they wouldn't be able to track you, because we know that, and the book gets into this, there's basically proof that your phone tracks you even when it's turned off, even when the settings are all set to not spy on you. Apple and Google and whoever the manufacturer is of the operating system, they still are tracking you, and we know the government's tracking us through them as well. But that was kind of the event for me that really got me scratching my head. And like you said, COVID, that really blew it wide open. I mean, if people can't see it from that, then they're willfully blind, or they just don't want to think about it because it's too hard to consider, the possibility of what's really going on. But I don't think people can completely deny it anymore. Even the ones who are in that state, they've got to know deep down that things don't make sense and there's something going on here.
Yeah. Well, the thing about 9/11 for me that really, really perplexed me and haunted me and kept me digging, even before I had heard about World Trade Center 7, was the people jumping to their deaths, leaping out of those buildings. It made no sense to me. And I would watch those videos quite often just trying to absorb and ask God to inform me what is going on here, because the buildings were not melting down. The fires were localized. Why are people jumping out of the buildings? There had to be a heat so oppressive and so horrific that it led people to make a horrific and even more horrific decision, and that's to leap to their deaths out of a high rise. I couldn't imagine anything more nightmarish. And it finally just dawned on me that something was going on in that building, because they brought it down probably with some sort of exotic explosives. And that's when we found out about thermite, nanothermite, and potentially even directed energy weapons. But it was really the collapse of World Trade Center 7 at free fall speed at 5 in the afternoon, about 5:20 in the afternoon, that was the smoking gun. And then I found video of Jane Stanley reporting live from New York about the collapse of that building 20 minutes, 10 minutes before it collapsed. I mean, come on. It's just amazing. But trusting
So in your
science.
face.
Oh, go ahead.
So in your face if you know where to look. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
100% in your face. And trusting the science. Early on in your book, you have a QR code that takes us to a Newsweek article titled "Fauci Making Millions During COVID Pandemic Sparks Backlash." And see, it's just stuff like that that makes your book so engaging. It's a much more effective way to convey the information and sort of rewind time so people go back and remember how victimized we were by these evildoers, these Satanists, I would say. And Fauci is right at the top of the list, along with Albert Bourla, who you note in the book, and Klaus Schwab. These are the people that should be perp walked. Now, I don't know what's going on at the FBI with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, but God bless America. We need to see some indictments and perp walks, Allan.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody feels like they're long overdue. Did you see that interview he did with Maria Bartiromo?
Who? Fauci?
No, not Fauci. I'm going back to Dan Bongino and
yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
yeah.
Now they're saying Epstein killed himself, and there's nothing to see at Butler, Pennsylvania. That lone child gunman, that CIA cutout. Oh, he acted alone. It's absolute BS.
Yeah. You know, I haven't put it out yet, but I want to put out just a brief video discussion of that, because to me there's some unescapable facts about that day in Butler, July 13th, and I'm sure you're aware of them. But just if anybody would just take the time to think of these couple things alone, they are irreconcilable outside of a government setup, and so think about this was the first event of all Trump's events where they had a counter sniper. In other words, they had a counter sniper ready to take out a would-be sniper. So until that time, there were no counter snipers on the roofs around Trump,
You
right?
know what? I did not know that. That's a very interesting footnote. I did not know that. That's the
Yeah, that
first
was the
time at an event. Well, see, okay, that was a lot of firsts then at that rally because that was the first time in over, I don't know how many hundreds of rallies he had, but that was the first time CNN was there broadcasting live.
exactly. That's what I was going to say is the second thing. So you have counter snipers ready to take someone out. So if they were concerned enough to be, and this was according to Breitbart, the first, you can look it up on Breitbart, that article about the first time. But if they were concerned enough to have a counter sniper there, how were they not concerned enough to protect the perimeter? That's irreconcilable. All right, and then you have the fact that CNN's there, and there was also a photographer there. I don't remember who, if it was New York Times or I think it was New York Times.
Pulitzer Prize winning photographer who had never been at a rally shooting high speed photography as he captured that bullet whizzing by the head.
Exactly, high speed. Like I forget, was it 1/6000th of a second? You know, like what you would do if you were filming a race car whizzing by you, right, at 200 miles an hour. There's no reason you normally would not use high speed when you're close because you're going to get a better quality picture when the speed's appropriate, right? So he had it on the highest shutter speed, and he caught that bullet as it went by. I believe we were meant to see Trump's brains blown out on TV, national TV, replayed, captured in a moment like that to just utterly horrify the nation and end the whole Trump movement right there and then one time and for all. Yeah. I think that's what that was really up on that day.
Yeah, I call it Dealey Plaza 2.0. And my thesis has been exactly what you just said. And it would have been trauma-based mind control. That would have been it. We would have been traumatized as an American public, so traumatized that certainly the Republican Party would have fallen directly into the hands of the neocons, or more likely, they would have gotten away with stealing another election.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have disheartened people. And they would have just like so many people probably would have been like, what's the point, you know? But yeah, we came so close to that.
You know, I hate to even say this because I don't want to feed the trolls, but the trolls have been saying, some people have been saying for quite a while that it was all part of an op and Trump was in on it. And the only reason I bring that up is not to lend any credibility to that theory. I think it's preposterous, but I do wonder why the heck Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are saying there's nothing to see here when clearly it is one of the biggest stories of our lifetimes. I mean, they tried to murder Donald J. Trump. After calling for it, they've been talking about murdering this guy. I don't know if you've seen some of the CIA spooks on CNN and other networks like Phil Mudd saying, government's got to take this guy out. Government's going to put a bullet in this guy. I mean, they were calling for his murder long before Butler, PA.
And Comey's recently calling for it as well. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to read through that, that code he put out there. So,
then so the question is, why on earth did Dan Bongino walk away from a $5 million a year gig with his Rumble show and his podcast to become the deputy director and do nothing and go on that little PR stunt with Maria and basically say nothing? In their body language, they both looked like they were hostages. Kash Patel, did you see Kash's eyes bug out? It just, the whole thing was so weird.
Bongino looked like he wanted to get the heck out of there. I mean, he looked tense. He looked really tense. No smiles, no warmth. And this is a guy who is used to being on camera, who's used to being aware of how he comes across. I was stunned. He looked petrified, or not, that's probably not the right word. He looked very tense and awkward. But here's my hope, and I'm probably hoping against hope here. He knew he was lying, but he was doing it for a different reason, which would be not to tip off people that they actually do have stuff on them. In other words, to send a false message out there to get people off their guard. That would be my hope. I'm not saying I believe that, but I hope it. Okay.
Well, here's the thing, because there's been so much hopium for so long. And by the way, some of it is coming to fruition. I mean, RFK Jr. is doing great things to make America healthy again. He's actually standing up to the homicidal big pharma manufacturers. I mean, he truly is. I mean, baby steps, right, to remove the CDC's recommendation of the COVID-19 bioweapon for children and pregnant women. That's a great thing, but we really need to get that damn bioweapon off the market altogether. And then we need to see indictments of people like Albert Bourla, who's been calling for depopulation, and people like Tony Fauci, who profited from all of it. And Bill Gates, by the way. So unless there's tribunals going on at Guantanamo that we don't know about, then I don't know. Then it is just hopium because we, the people, need to see indictments. That is what we voted for, Alan.
Absolutely, we do. And you know, I've heard the argument that you know, there's so much to bringing this down, and that once they start, they have to move fast. So they need to maybe delay until they've got enough to really kind of do a lot of it all at once before the rats can jump ship. I don't know if that's true, but I'm frustrated like you are. And I think the whole country is, the whole right side of the country is.
Yeah. Well, I just want to name a couple of the bad guys in addition to Klaus Schwab, of course, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the central bankers, but Al Gore. You know, I've always despised Al Gore almost as much as I despise John Kerry. And Al Gore's net worth, guys, in 2007, Ellen notes this in the book. Do you know what Al Gore was worth in 2007? $700,000. Do you know what his net worth had grown to by 2015? $172 million. That's a 246x. I mean, honest to God, Alan, these people are all corrupt to the core. And Al Gore, see, here's the weird part about these people, too. They always double down on their talking points, no matter how ridiculous they look and how wrong they've been proven. Al Gore called for the melting of the ice caps by what, 2016, 17, by the time he was a multimillionaire? And it never happened, and it ain't gonna happen, Alan.
Yeah, it's incredible. So yeah, in the book I go there's an article that says 10 years later. 10 years later, how did Al Gore's predictions work out? And it said, contrary to his 2006 claims, by 2016, the Arctic didn't melt. Polar bears were not harmed by climate change. They were actually thriving. Kilimanjaro was not snow-free, and storms were not occurring more often nor at higher intensities, you know, according to the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So he was wrong on like every major count, every major talking point. And yet he still has credibility, and he's earning massive amounts of money by fear mongering over climate change. I mean, $172 million. You know, the guy, unbelievable.
Yeah, flies around in private jets, just like John Kerry, the Skull and Bones man. And yeah, they're just absolute hypocrites. By the way, page 35 in the book, guys, The Rise of the Alternative News Media. Again, something that is such a buoying thing for the human spirit. To watch CNN and the Washington Post and the New York Times and MSNBC crumble, their audiences shrinking to the point where they're really just paper tigers. And Rise of the Alternative News Media. Here's the quote from John Adams. Facts are stubborn things. Ain't that the truth? Now, here's a short list of Alan's favorite alt media news sources. And Alan, I'll forgive you for not putting me in your book here, but the Epic Times, I concur. The Gateway Pundit, Jim Hoft, great work. Mike Adams, Health Ranger Report, Natural News. Stephen Bannon's War Room. Man in America, Seth Holhouse. Here's the one I bumped on. The only thing in your whole book I bumped on. Gregory Mannarino, a Freemason. I don't know if you know that, but
I did not know that.
An avowed, admitted 32nd degree Freemason. He did a whole video about it once, wearing his Freemason garb back in the day, and that video has since been deleted, but I watched it with my own eyes. Censored.news, and of course, InfoWars with Alex Jones. InfoWars with Alex Jones was seminal in my awakening, and I don't think there's anybody better or anybody who's been more targeted by the horror media and the powers that ought not be than Alex Jones.
Oh yeah, he's been all but bankrupted. I mean, he is bankrupted actually. I mean, he's running on fumes, you know, from month to month. He has taken so much heat, and you know, I actually talked to people who were trying to convince me when I was in the writing stage not to put this in the book because they said it'll turn so many people off. And I said I have to, because to not put him in would be an injustice to him. I realize a lot of people think he's toxic, and I'm not talking about people who would listen to this show, but there's a lot of people who they just absolutely, the discussion's over once you bring him up, you know. But I mean, the man has done more than anybody to advance the cause and to open the eyes of so many people. And he is like the king of the 30,000 foot view in terms of understanding what's really happening in the world. There's nobody as good as Alex. And the other thing I want to say, Sean, is this was just a list of who I was listening to at the time I was writing the book. My eyes have been opened, and actually lately I've been listening to you a lot more. But and I even said that in the book. There's so many more. I said, but I'm only giving you the ones that I have personal depth with. So
Oh no, that's funny, man.
yeah,
I'm just giving you a hard time. I
I
mean,
know.
frankly, Zero Hedge is one of the publications I look to every day, but there's so many great people now in the truth space doing terrific work. Ann Vandersteel, Sarah Westall.
Oh
Some of
yeah.
these people are personal friends of mine. And let me just say regarding Seth Holhouse and myself, I don't think there would be a Seth Holhouse or an SGT report were it not for Alex Jones. And I've said this many times, and I'll say it to the day I die. Alex Jones promoted my work on his show early on in like 2010, 2011. He played some of my micro documentaries in full, like 7, 8, 9 minute micro documentaries. I mean, that was stunning to me. And I was an avid listener. So, of course, that was a special thing that I thought he did. But he was always trying to prop up and promote people who he believed were truth tellers trying to do the right thing. But there would be no me without Alex Jones. He's the one who inspired me early on. And he's got such a lock on the history. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. His
Yeah.
recall is absolutely, bar none, the best out there.
Yeah, he is, and the volume of things he's read, the globalist publications that he has read, are unparalleled. The guy must have a photographic memory. I mean, I just don't. He's a walking encyclopedia, and he can quote it without looking it up, and it's just it's amazing. I don't know. What a mind.
Yeah. All right, guys. So as you think about the New World Order trying to collapse the world essentially and usher in their New World Order, how would they do that? Well, as cited in the book, they would have to collapse critical systems like borders, security and police protection, privacy, banking and finance, education. Boy, they've done a great job with that, right? They brainwashed our kids into believing little boys can be girls and girls can be boys. Energy, environment, medical systems, the food supply, and self identity, to which I also noted here, and I added this national identity, Alan, and of course,
Yes.
faith. Faith. They have to collapse our faith. They have to outlaw the Bible. They have to outlaw the mention of Jesus Christ and God in the town square. And you know what? To that end, they've done a pretty good job at it too, but they cannot extinguish this great awakening. It almost seems, I've said this recently, Alan, you tell me if you think I'm right. There's a yin and yang to the universe. God gave us this beautiful balance in the universe. And for as evil as these people are, there comes a point where there's a tipping point that is reached, and people begin to wake up and recognize the evil because it is so blatant. And then there is the flipping of the script. There is the pushback that is inevitable. And light extinguishes their darkness and their evil. And that's what they can't believe. They can't believe that they've lost control this quickly. You know, keep in mind, man, they had total control in 2001 when they pulled off 9/11. They're losing control, are they not?
Oh, they are absolutely losing control, and it's accelerating. I mean, my personal belief is that God honors people of courage. And if we're willing to step out, he multiplies the effort. So, we can go back to Alex Jones and what a warrior he's been and how the heck has he not given up, but he stayed in the fight. And then look what happened. Other people were won over, Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson. I mean, you've got X and Elon Musk. These people were basically all won over to the truth, and they were not easy to win. You know what I mean? They came over to seeing things again, going back to Alex Jones, pretty much how he sees the world, and then that just multiplied because of their impact, of their influence, and their big megaphone, and especially when X opened up, free speech, at least to some degree, enough to really get the word out. These were all tipping points that just kept building more and more momentum. And my belief is that I'm hoping that this book can contribute to that momentum, because this is the thing that could get the normies to finally come over. That's really the hope. That's my personal belief, with these 11 collapse points that you were just discussing and how you go through it. But we that is really the thing. We need to wake up the rest of the country too, so that we're never again in danger of someone stealing an election, um, the way they've been able to steal it in the past. Make it too big to rig forever, because so many people were won over that they just can't do it anymore. That would be my hope.
Yeah. Well, as I flip to page 62, their number one goal to usher in their new world order is this, guys: a world government with centralized power over everything that matters. Now, we talked about the assassination attempt in Butler, PA on July 13th. Because they could not successfully assassinate Donald J. Trump, he is now the president, and he's playing hardball. He's ended our relationship with the World Health Organization. He's gotten us out of the United Nations Agenda 2030. We're now out of that. Our country is not playing ball. Where do you think we would be, Allan, had they successfully blown Trump's head off on July 13th in Butler, PA?
Oh my gosh, Kamala would be in there, and it's like we were going over the cliff with a brick on the gas pedal. There'd be nothing stopping it. I mean, Hillary was supposed to take us there, and then Trump got in, and here we are again. We were supposed to be there with Kamala, and Trump's back in one more time. And it is just, it feels like it's a battle to the death to me, honestly. Something's going to give. I mean, they're going to keep trying to assassinate him. And he's either going to take them out or they're going to take him out, one or the other. That's what it feels like to me. A lot of people are so relieved that he's in, and I am too at one level, but on another level, I'm also aware that this is a battle that's not going away. I mean, they've had these plans in the work for decades and decades. You could argue centuries. But they're not ending it just because they get a setback. I mean, we saw what happened when Biden got in there, how many things he undid and how fast he and the people behind him undid it, and how the floodgates opened and the borders were open. And, with Mayorkas and everything he was doing. I mean, just the level of evil and how organized they can be and how fast they can move once they get a foothold again. So we can't let that happen. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that they can be overcome, but we have to consider it's a big world. They're not just operating in the United States. They're global, and hopefully we can save the United States, and then the United States can start to save the rest of the world. Through the example, lead by example.
Guys, apologies for a quick break and a quick word about a really great sponsor. Have you heard about this amazing wrinkle filler that just hit the market? This product is incredible. We've been told our whole lives that wrinkle creams were the easiest way to look younger. Now one doctor says that's nothing but old news. According to John Lakey, the world-renowned Beverly Hills beauty expert, most wrinkle fixes on the market are nothing but glorified moisturizers that hardly make a dent in your appearance. But this product is different, and it actually works. This revolutionary anti-aging breakthrough, he says, is almost like Photoshop for your face. His personal clients have dubbed it the Age Rewinder Method because it can take years off your appearance. And for my loyal listeners, Dr. Lakey says you can get this amazing breakthrough for over $76 off the retail price, and you can save up to $258 on the multiple bottle options. Best of all, you can use Beverly Hills MD Deep Wrinkle Filler from home. Make sure you go to bhmd1.com/SGT or just click the link below. One user even commented, "The best results of anything I've ever used." Get the Deep Wrinkle Filler at this amazing discount of over $76 off at bhmd1.com/SGT. The link is below.
Hopefully we can save the United States, and then the United States can start to save the rest of the world, through the example, lead by example.
Yeah. Well, he's very serious in that even on Truth Social, he has posted many messages, I always like to say tweet. He has tweeted, but you know what I'm trying to say. He's put up information on Truth Social using the word treason time and time and time again as it applies to the former administration and people like Mayorkas, etc., Joe Biden. Goal number 2, the end of independent medicine and bodily autonomy. Now, guys, bodily autonomy, the end of bodily autonomy, That doesn't mean gals can't go get their abortions anymore. No, that would be fast track. You can always get an abortion under the New World Order. What you don't have the right to do is refuse to be forced vaccinated. That's goal number 2. Goal number 3, a social credit score system to control the masses just like China has. Now, here's the one I want to talk about. Goal number 4, a programmable digital world currency. Another thing this president has done is said we will never embrace a central bank issued digital currency. That to me is the beast system from which there would be no escape from being debanked. And so, standing in stark contrast to that is Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Now, my audience doesn't like Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, but it's a heck of a lot better than a central bank digital currency. And Trump has said, not on my watch. Again, where would we be without Donald J. Trump? We would be getting a central bank digital currency and a social credit score and no flying for you, Patriot.
Yeah, that's right. The China being the model for the world, it would have been, it was China first, Europe second, and the U.S. third, right behind him, I think.
Yep, that's right. Continuing here, goal number 5, 15-minute cities and travel restrictions. Goal number 6, enforced climate lockdowns. Goal number 7, criminalizing religious speech, of course. Goal number 8, massive population reduction. Now, you note globalist Bill Gates' TED Talk, the famous TED Talk where he says, if we do the vaccines and these other things, we could bring global population down by maybe 15%. His words, not mine. It was a really stark admission that the man is a eugenicist. All right, well, where I want to go next here is page 133, collapse, banking and finance. If there is a way that they can salvage their new world order and bring the world to its knees, Allan, it would be through a total systemic collapse. And what's going on right now in the bond market is pretty scary. And what's going on in the Japanese bond market is even more scary. And they hold the most bonds, over $1 trillion of U.S. bonds. I think this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Do you agree? And how do we extricate ourselves from that collapse scenario, like sort of a Rothschild Rockefeller induced collapse scenario?
Yeah, it is. It to me, it's the one I think about the most, and that I'm most concerned about in terms of, is there anything we really can do to stop it? Because as a nation, if we were to try to stop it for the U.S., that would mean we would have to pull out of the Federal Reserve. To my way of thinking, we would have to cut off our association with the Federal Reserve note, which means our whole dollar-based system, the U.S. dollar, would no longer be funded by loans from the Federal Reserve, which would probably mean that we would have a kind of Russian-style default like they did after the fall of the Soviet Union, where all the debts are canceled, where the U.S. dollar is no good. And we would have to come out with another system backed by something, whether that's gold or natural resources or something that could be audited. I think it would be brutal. I think it would be, so many people would lose everything, lose their retirement. People that have a lot of debt could end up losing their homes. And, you just don't know how that would unfold. You don't know what would happen to the actual banking system itself, which is all part of that whole thing. We would have to develop a whole new currency and banking system, probably with national banks and state banks, like it was before 1913 when the Fed came into power. I would see it. The U.S. would probably lose a lot of its power and influence in the world because we wouldn't have the ability to leverage, that financial power anymore. I kind of think of it as a false financial power, but yeah, we wouldn't have that. And so, we would be, I could see a time where we could for a while possibly be on almost like a bartering system, where you're trading things for other things until a new system could come in. But honestly, it's kind of like, we're bringing manufacturing back and having tariffs, and there's pain because we've been for so long, without a solid manufacturing base, that if we're going to bring it back, we almost have to tariff it so that people have no choice but to build it here. And so there's going to be shortages, there's going to be discomfort. I see the same parallel kind of concept with the banking system. What we have now is built on sand. It's not a system that can withstand the test of time. we've obviously borrowed ourselves into oblivion to the point where it really can't be paid back. Um, it's just the whole thing has to come down, and we have to have a fresh start. So I really don't know what that looks like, but I just encourage people to, um, have their own, have gold and silver, and have things purchased that you can have in reserve in case it happens. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but just like an insurance policy, you should have something in case it happens. And the other thing I recommend to people, and I'm not a financial analyst, so just take it with a grain of salt if you want, but spread your money among several banks instead of one. I mean, you have to have some money in the bank, but if they go, they probably all won't go at the same time. And we saw this in Greece, right, where the banks went, and as I recall, the first thing they did is they basically froze everything beyond a certain amount. I think I remember it being 50,000 euros, which sounds like a high amount, but everyone else just took a haircut. They lost what they had over that amount. So they can do it in a lot of ways. It doesn't necessarily have to go to zero. It could go to something, greater than zero. But if you have all your assets in one bank, you're in danger of losing a good percentage of it. So, those are the kind of things I think about and ask people to consider.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to play a warning soundbite for the audience in just 1 second. There's a QR code in the book. I played the soundbite in the past in my economic reports regarding FDIC bail-in. So we'll play that in just 1 second. But before we get there, let's talk Trump tariffs. 1913, you just mentioned the Federal Reserve. We also got the IRS in 1913. Prior to that, we had tariffs. From like 1870 to 1912, and the country was extremely, extremely wealthy. And Trump noted that in his 3-hour podcast with Joe Rogan. He talked about McKinley and tariffs. I'd never heard that before. I didn't know that history. A fascinating, fascinating podcast. But Trump tariffs, again, had they blown the man's head off on July 13th, we wouldn't have Trump tariffs. Now, I don't know where that's exactly going, but I think it's a pretty cool idea since we've been getting raped by every other country forever because they charge tariffs on our goods, so we can't export stuff. Meanwhile, all we do is buy their stuff. Trump said enough is enough. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I agree. And, I used to be in manufacturing. I was a VP of operations for a company. And I saw how manufacturing works and the implications of manufacturing for the economy. Because here's the thing a lot of people miss. By bringing back manufacturing, we are doing a lot more than just creating those jobs that manufacture that product. It's the whole supply chain. So the parts and everything, the raw materials that go into it, if those are all for the most part purchased from American companies who have employees, so then you get that ripple effect. But it goes beyond that even still. And here's what most people miss. And economists call it the velocity of money, right? And so what happens as we spend our money, we're giving it to other people who can then spend that money. And so the more that happens, that increases what they call the velocity of money, just how quickly is money getting spent as opposed to hoarded, right? So what happens when you bring manufacturing back, we're paying each other instead of paying China or another nation, because if it's not being spent here in the country on goods produced in the country, it's like a sieve. The money's going out, it's pouring out into other countries and not helping our country. So by bringing manufacturing back, Trump understands that this has a multiplier effect on the economy and on jobs. And then you also get the other great benefit was if more people have jobs, then less people are on government money, right? Less people are taking money from the government because they have their own job, which then means there's more tax revenue flowing into the government. So now the government has more revenue and lower expenses. And so you can get rid of your debt. I mean, it's such a virtuous cycle. And the globalists knew this when they brought in NAFTA and when they brought in China, into the World Trade Organization and gave them most favored nation status. They knew that it was going to drain the West, America, Europe, the West, Western society was going to be drained and weakened. And that was their plan. But if we reverse that, the opposite will happen. If we just bring the manufacturing back, we're going to get all these benefits, and it can accelerate, I think, quicker than we can imagine. We saw it in the first administration. When he did it only to a degree, we saw the benefits of it.
Yeah. What do you make of Jerome Powell not playing ball in lowering interest rates, which he was happy to do under Biden, but he will not do it under Trump? Trump is pissed off. Evidently, Trump can't fire the guy. And every time I see Jerome Powell, you know who I think of? I think of Rothschild, Rockefeller, Morgan. He's the spokesperson for the trillionaires behind the scenes. What do you make of Jerome Powell refusing to lower interest rates as all of these bonds need to be renegotiated at hopefully lower rates, but instead they'll probably be higher rates?
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre that they were willing to go one way when they thought, Kamala was going to win, and then as soon as Trump gets in, they go the other way. Especially if you consider that he's bringing manufacturing back, and he's bringing trillions, literally trillions of dollars in investments from foreign countries back into the country. I mean, they can see the trend line of that. I mean, they have to be able to see that. So if there was ever a time to say it's looking better financially for the country, this would be it. And usually that would be a good enough reason to lower the rates right there. I guess on the pushing the other way, though, is the budget that they got through the House. I don't understand why they didn't reflect more of the savings of Doge and the future savings of their intent to reduce expenses. That was really concerning, and pushing the debt limit up by 4 trillion. You know what I mean? And so it still seems like we are really lacking fiscal discipline, the will. And I guess that's the battle that's going on right now in the Senate, right? They're looking to cut a lot more money than the House did. And I hope they can get it. It's kind of a nail biter with that whole process.
Well, let me add some breaking news here. So Elon Musk tweeted, "Hey, I tried." And today we have this from Zero Hedge. After backlash, White House prepares rescissions bill to codify some Doge cuts. The House is eager and ready. So we got to dig into that article and see what they're really going to do. But some of the things they've done do help unwind this new world order, like ending the Department of Education and sending the job of educating our kids back to the States, which will undoubtedly do a better job. They couldn't do a worse job than the Department of Education, Allan.
Oh yeah, and it's the globalist methodology. Everything is always rolled up to the highest level, the federal level, the world level, whatever it can be. If they can have an educational policy for the whole country and control it and corrupt it and weaken it, that's what they're going to do. If they can have a COVID policy for the country, that's one thing, but they'd rather control it at the World Health Organization level, right? And that's what they do when they can. And thank God we're pulling out of that. So they always roll it up because they want to concentrate power, and they always ruin it once it gets concentrated.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's the clip I wanted to play. Allan warned you all about what could happen with bank bail-ins. And for those who think, well, it's really not a problem because I know my deposits are insured by the FDIC. Well, not so fast, guys. And that'll bring us back to central bank digital currencies versus crypto. But here are the folks at the FDIC literally laughing that the sheeple people have no idea what could be coming.
It should be there. It should be accessible when people need to know. But I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim, right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do. That we want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people that charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
All right, I'm coming back to you, Allan. Do you have any comments on that before I play the clip from JD Vance about cryptocurrency?
Comment on the FDIC. Oh my gosh. Yeah, these people really play us as suckers, and they know how fragile the banking system is. They know how vulnerable it is to a bank run, and they're just hoping that we don't catch on. But we better catch on. And that video, people should probably rewind it and play it a couple times to really get it in their minds. What these people know and what they're basically hiding from the rest of us.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know, dear audience, I really love you guys, and I know you don't like Bitcoin. It could just be trolls. Maybe trolls hate Bitcoin. And I mean, honestly, that really could be it, because Bitcoin is truly freedom money. It's not beholden to a bank. They can't do a bail-in on your Bitcoin, guys. Same would be true with Solana. I'm a big fan of both, but I want to play this. Let me show you guys. Very important. Now, you don't have to believe in Bitcoin or crypto. You can hate it all you want, but I'm here to tell you it is not a central bank digital currency, and it cannot be bailed in. Now, the Vigilant Fox posted this on Twitter. JD Vance just took a flamethrower to the ruling class at the Bitcoin conference. Here it comes.
Crypto is a hedge against bad policymaking from Washington, no matter what party is in control. It's a hedge against skyrocketing inflation, which has eroded the savings rate of Americans over the last 4 years. And as you all know well, it's a hedge against a private sector that's increasingly willing to discriminate against consumers on the basis of their basic beliefs, including their politics.
He's talking about debanking, you guys.
Yeah, he's right on.
That includes, of course, debanking users for Second Amendment advocacy or for ties to the first Trump administration. In Canada, the government did the same to kill those big truck driver protests in 2022. Less than a week later, they succeeded. The protests were over. But maybe most importantly, I see crypto as a hedge against one of the most dangerous trends in the digital era in both the public and private sectors. And that's of elites who, rather than innovate themselves, prefer to simply take over and co-opt cutting-edge technologies to assert their control over other people. And I know we believe this in this room. That's not Bitcoin. It'll never be Bitcoin. And you guys are going to make sure that happens.
All right. We'll pause it there. We'll return to Allan for his comment. Allan, let me just point out for my audience who really loathes Bitcoin for some reason and cryptocurrencies, I have a lot of physical silver, I have some physical gold, and I own some Bitcoin and some Solana. Here's the thing. Guys, who stood in opposition to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? Gary Gensler, the former Goldman snake, and Elizabeth Warren, that demon rat. What did they both stand for and want? A central bank digital currency. Your comment on what you just heard, Allan.
Yeah, it really comes down to they want control no matter what, and they don't want anything that gets outside of that little box, that trap that they're trying to set. So cryptocurrency gives you freedom outside of their ability, the federal government's ability to control it. Cash, physical cash does a similar thing, which, they're basically trying to end that too. So I think it's wise to have some cryptocurrency. I think a lot of people are just afraid of the technology, or what if I forget my password, then I lose all my cryptocurrency. I mean, you do have to take precautions, and you have to be careful if you're using a wallet that's controlled by a third party. I mean, from what I understand, the best way to do it is to, keep it on your own computer, have your direct access to it without necessarily having to go through a wallet that can be possibly shut down. But so you have to do your homework. That's my point. But if you're concerned about government control of your cash, their ability to take it, confiscate it, collapse the banking system, anybody who doesn't have some cryptocurrency at that point is going to be really wishing they did. So I think it's a wise insurance policy. And if it feels too hard to manage, then I would say get somebody to help you who understands it, who can give you a comfort level where you're willing to take a look at it, and just forget about your resistance to the whole technical side of it, and think more in terms of it as a type of insurance policy that you really ought to have.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just add to that. It's never been easier now to buy Bitcoin, guys. You can do it through an ETF like iBit or Grayscale's ETF, or you can just open an account at Coinbase and they will custody the Bitcoin for you. And you can dollar cost average. You could throw $100 a month at it. It's very, very simple. And I don't know. And people have been telling me I'm nuts to own it since 2015, since I started buying at $359. And I told my audience they might want to consider doing the same, Alan. And to this day, people tell me I'm crazy and it's digital trash. To which I say, well, you know what? It's funny. How did I buy my son a house with it then? I turned the Bitcoin into cash recently and I bought a home for my
Yeah.
son and my grandkids. So I don't know. I just honestly, I don't know what more I can say to people, but you conclude nicely on page 267 with preparation. Proverbs 27:12. A prudent man sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it. Why don't I give you the final word about preparation? And I'm not predicting a total collapse at this point because Donald J. Trump is in office, and I think we stand a real fighting chance here. And by the way, a lot of states are now saying gold and silver are legal tender, Bitcoin legal tender. I mean, there's a real sea change happening in this country. And the one thing we got going for us that the EU does not have is the sovereignty of these 50 states. So if one wants to be completely tyrannical like Colorado or Illinois or New York State or California, then just get the hell out and move to a state that will protect your liberty. I'll give you the final word, and I couldn't have enjoyed talking to you more, Alan.
Oh, the feeling's totally mutual. Like I said, I was really looking forward to this. Yeah, so when it comes to, preparation, I actually hesitated to put this chapter in the book at the end, but I felt like I really had to because there's so much of the book is about a warning. And so it felt like I really had to end it. Okay, so what can I do about it at a practical level, right? And the book talks about psychological preparation, and then physical preparation, and it talks about spiritual preparation. But so all three, in my view, should work together. So psychological preparation would be kind of anticipating what their next moves could be in each of the 11 collapse points that the book talks about. And the chapter goes through that. What could they be possibly doing next in each of these areas? And that's to kind of prepare us psychologically. If they do it, we're not as surprised. We're not as shocked. We've kind of said, oh, yeah, we thought through that they might try that next. So that's one of the things, psychological preparation. Physical preparation, of course, that's just doing the things that would be smart to do if these systems were to start collapsing. Things like, food and water, home and personal defense, electronic privacy. What can you do in that area in terms of the phone you use or the email systems you use, things like that. Having access to cash and purchasing power as a backup. Gold, silver, things like that, possibly barter items as you get kind of further down the collapse point. Energy, really important to have a backup energy supply. You could have, solar batteries and chargers. You could have, think about your heat. If your house is all electric heat, maybe you install a pellet stove or some type of storable heating source where your fuel is storable and you're not dependent on the government, keeping the electricity going. Talk about medical supplies. And we really end up with a discussion again on mental resilience and then on faith itself, because, I view faith as the cornerstone of everything. If your faith is strong, if you're right with God, it gives you the courage to move forward when everyone else is living in fear. It gives you the stamina to help not only your family but to also reach out to your neighbors, people in your community. To be an example, to be a leader. We hope it doesn't come to these things, but we could see how it was going there under the last administration. And so we're in a battle. We can't assume that we're going to win every aspect of this battle. We should be prepared. It's the responsible adult thing to do. We need to shed that normalcy bias that we talked about earlier. And, normalcy bias being essentially the belief that it never happened in my personal past, therefore it'll never happen in my personal future. That's unfortunately, that's what the people in Germany believed before Hitler came to power as well. So look at things objectively and think about what you should do to be responsible as an adult, to take care of your family and yourself. And think about those things. The book creates an easy outline of things you can consider. It has QR codes to connect you to places where you can get those backup supplies. And it's just a very easy way to kind of get on top of it and kind of make it happen. But I think it's a responsible thing to do. Again, let faith be your anchor, though, and live in faith, not fear. And I think everybody will be fine. And hopefully we can all help each other out if it ever gets to that point. But let's spread the word. Let's get the message out there about what's going on. Try to get the normies won over, and let's try to stop it from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And drop kernels of knowledge whenever you can. Speak out whenever you can. Find your steely reserve to do just that. As Mark Twain said, in the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man and brave and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. And that's where we are right now, guys. There's many who have gone under the barbed wire before any of us, and those are the leaders in the space. They paved the way for us to be leaders as well. So do it. This is your opportunity. It's what you were born for. And the book is below, Exposed, the Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything to Usher in a New World Order, in their own words, by Allan Paul Roberts. Allan, by the way, thanks for sending me a signed copy of your book. I appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. Happy to spread the word, and I'm so glad you invited me on your show. It's been great talking to you.
All right. Godspeed, my friend. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And friends, if you're still with us, we appreciate you as well. And I'll remind you, like I always do, check us out at sgtreport.com, where we try to bring you the real news, the antidote to corporate CIA, Mockingbird mainstream media 24/7. And until next time, guys, may God, the Creator, bless you and yours. Bye-bye.
Pan was a Roman god who was half goat, half man. So he has the horns of a goat. The bottom half, his feet are goat feet, and he has wool. It is grotesque. But in addition to pandemonium, you get the word pandemic and panic. And I think it's ironic, and maybe not so ironic, but reveals to us the evil that here the senator in the state of California who leads 267 is none other than Senator Pan.